And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. With palms down. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Dharma Bum Temple. Just turned on the air conditioning so it should kick on any moment. Hopefully you don't believe that. You'll be really disappointed. Every day is filled with things that just don't go the way we want them to. And the thing I love about this practice so much is that that's the first thing the Buddha taught, is that life is going to be filled with discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction, struggle, suffering. And learning to be with that is so important. If you're new to practice, you've been at this for a while, I always like to just start there, just reminding us that that's what we get every day, is a day filled with discomfort. And that's just what we get. Some days it's more than others. Some days it's less than others. Some days we go through and it's pretty okay. And some days we see people we know and love struggle quite a bit. And then that changes. We're struggling and others are okay. But, our life is filled with discomfort. And so when we sit with, little things like temperature, sounds, that's what it is. And none of those things, for the most part, at least this temperature and these sounds, are life-threatening. But it's amazing how much the little things, the little discomforts, can really bother us. And for me, part of the practice is really welcoming them. The madness that rolls into a place like this all day long is pretty maddening. And so it's a beautiful practice to just try to be with it and kind of observe yourself as you go through your days. But you're going to struggle. So again, if you are brand new to Buddhism and you think that, a 6-week course in Buddhism is going to make everything all grand, you should probably ask for your money back. So we'll start with a meditation practice. A couple things to tell you before we begin. For those who might be new or sitting for the first time, nothing's going to happen to you, right? You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. Don't ask yourself, is this working? Is this not working? Are you doing it right? Are you doing it wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. All right? You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside the room. This is life. Life is filled with sounds. So practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of it. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on the cushions, often it helps slide to the front third, pushing the stomach forward. Allows the shoulders to relax, hands come on the knees or in the lap. If you're on the chairs or benches, also just trying to sit up straight. Shoulders relaxed. I will guide us as we begin. We'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, don't expect anything from this practice. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Going throughout the practice, you'll hear sounds. These are not distractions, not disruptions. Simply what's happening around us as we sit. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. yet concerned with nothing, but sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds. And the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. The most important, the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit, the hands across the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddhist awakening. The word Buddha simply means awaken. He was a human being, no different than anyone in this room, who began to understand why he suffered. Why you got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means, very simply, for every one of us in this room, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's what we get every day. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way we respond to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how we respond to everything else that's happening throughout our days. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to the way you feel now is closer. How you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful. Whatever that means to you in your respective lives. With a mind that's steady, clear, focused. Distracted by nothing. Disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. But meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. Sitting, breathing, learning to be kind, and becoming aware of everything you think, everything you say, and everything you do. And that's really why this practice is so difficult. Because we spend so much of our day running around, trying to fix everyone else, change everyone else, correct everyone else. Hoping they do this, hoping they do that, wishing they would do this, wishing they would do that. So much time running around trying to control and manipulate the world outside of us. Trying to create a perfect environment for us. As opposed to recognizing the environment that you're in, that's it. Learn to be with that. When you feel the heat, be with that. When you hear the sounds, be with that. The dog I actually checked on earlier, if it was being tortured, I would have gone out there. Just want to get that out of the way. It's just an unhappy dog in an apartment. It's too long. But unless something changed, it's not being harmed. For you dog lovers who are wondering that. Yes. Or for the few of you who might have been wondering about why the dog is barking and ruining your meditation. That always occurs when that everything goes on over there, because often, we sit here and we sweat, and then the noise goes on over there. And that's like the compressor thing that's actually turning on to give them air. And I talked about this, I think it was last summer, where often we're like, oh, it's loud, it's ruining my meditation. As opposed to thinking like, wow, that's great. They get to cool off. But we don't tend to look at things from the lens of others. We tend to look at things from the lens of ourselves. I mean, why would we waste any time wondering what other people are doing and thinking about and making sure that their needs are met? Most of our time is focused on ourselves. And a big part of this practice is to recognize that it's not all about us. My day today was interesting because I guarantee everything that I attempted to do today, other than maybe one thing, didn't work. Or didn't go as planned. And the problem is not that it didn't go as planned. The problem is that I actually had some idea of how or what I wanted to do. That's my fault. As soon as you let go of any expectations or ideas of the outcomes that you want, and you learn to be with things as they are, then you become more real and more present with what's happening, as opposed to tying to the stories in your head of how you want things to go. And that's where we spend most of our time, telling ourselves a story in our head of how we want things to go. And the way things go never matches that story. So we suffer. That's what the Buddha taught very clearly. We create ideas in our mind of how we want our lives to go, and it doesn't work, and then we suffer. As opposed to just recognizing that things are as they are. And they are that way because we created the environment for that to be the case. But we don't always see things that way. just say, for example, someone created a huge mess somewhere outside a temple, and I can say, well, they created a huge mess. I have to clean it up. Well, I'm equally responsible for that condition to be occurring because I'm here. If I wasn't here, if we weren't here, if this temple weren't here, that wouldn't be happening. So we all, and that's what karma is. Karma is understanding what we think, what we say, and what we do creates our environment. But it's very easy for us to quickly point fingers at other people and blame them for what they do. And to me, the real part of waking up and the real beauty of this practice is to recognize, what is my role in all of this? How attached to that am I? And other people that I'm thinking should be or do things a certain way. Anyone in here have people in your life that you wish did things a certain way? 100%. If you didn't raise your hand, you're lying. Right? So that's just the way it goes. Never going to happen. And then the question is, how do we respond to that? And can we be honest with that situation? Karma, what we think, what we say, and what we do. Not what we deserve, not what goes around comes around. It's what we put into the world. And you have 100% control over that. You are in control of all of your karma. Which is really great news, unless you think and say and do a lot of harmful things. You know? And you might want to duck once in a while. So I'm going to stop there and open up to questions. Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with that I can address, and we'll go from there. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I kind of got here kind of late. But
why are you apologizing to me?
No good answer. But
all right.
What I was going to ask is that I don't want to sound like I'm challenging you, but I'm just simply asking because I'd like to understand like your perspective.
Yeah.
But I understand that you have to like accept that things happen, and if you get caught up with that, obviously like that just affects you in a negative way, and you should just accept it. But shouldn't you want to like do something to change your environment to like make it better versus just like accepting it?
Yes, you should.
So
no, hang on. What's your name?
Kelly.
Say again?
Kelly.
Kelly, nice to meet you, Kelly. It's your first time here?
Yeah.
What brings you here?
This guy.
The guy next to you. Who's the guy next to you?
My roommate.
Your roommate. What brings you here, roommate?
Just running out online.
What's your name?
Ben.
Ben?
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Ben and Kelly. I could spend the next 40 minutes just with Kelly. Kelly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know anything about Buddhist teachings? No.
I rarely learned it in school, so very.
First, let me back up and say, no need to apologize to me for being late. Second, please challenge me anytime you like. I'm just some unenlightened, ignorant dude like everybody else in the room. I only sit here because there's a place to sit up here, and, it's probably more appropriate than sitting over there in the corner and staring at the wall. So please challenge me as often as you'd like, and recognize that you're not actually challenging me. You're simply, what you kind of said, asking questions about what are these Buddhist teachings really about? So let's get to the point of what I think your question is, which is, when we recognize things are not okay, shouldn't we want to do something about it? That's your question, basically, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So 16 years ago, I recognized that I was a really angry, depressed, pissed off person. And I wanted to do something about that. And so I did. I worked extremely hard at cutting through my greed, my anger, my ignorance, recognizing my ego, my pride, this attachment to thinking I had to be right all the time. I'm sure you don't have any of these things. I'm just talking about myself.
Oh, no,
Right.
I definitely.
Oh, you do? Okay, thanks. Thanks for clarifying that. And so, yes, I recognize I didn't like the person I was, and I wanted to change that. Now, there are two ways to go about that with myself. I can be angry at myself and hate myself and think I'm a terrible person. Or I can open up my heart and say, I've done the best I could for a long time and I'm still miserable and depressed, and maybe I should have some love and kindness and compassion towards myself while I work on changing my thoughts, my words, my actions, my behaviors. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
Yeah. So once you spend a very long time working on that, and you want to try to venture out to everything in the world that is, in our perception, wrong, there are a couple ways you can go about that. There's so many things in this world that kind of disgust me, that I would love to see differently. But all of those things also have millions of people in the world that like those things. Make sense?
Yeah.
So am I right?
No.
No. Okay, good. We're starting from I'm very happily sharing that my perception and view of something in the world that is not okay doesn't mean I'm right. It just means it's my perception of a situation. And if I want to work to change things, which I spend every day of my life doing, I better come from a place of love and kindness and compassion as opposed to anger and fury. Otherwise, I'm just going to make things worse. So Buddhist practice is not complacency. It's not avoidance. It's not sitting under a tree, smoking pot, drinking beer, and everything is fine. Sorry. Right? I was just... It was your reaction I saw. Really funny peripheral vision thing. So I saw all of that. Right? And then you're brand new and I already put you on the spot. Sorry. But it's engaging in the world, but in a way where you're kind towards it. First, kind towards yourself, and then towards others. So there's a lot there, but that's like just scratching the surface for really a newbie who might think that Buddhism means you just don't do anything. The Buddha himself spent 45 years walking around India teaching people to be kind. That was an extremely diligent and difficult effort to help change the hearts and minds of millions of people. Buddhist practice to me has been probably the most difficult thing I've ever encountered in my entire life. It's not the escape, it's not lazy. It's a big wake-up call that starts with yourself. It's just holding the mirror up every single day and asking yourself, am I greedy, am I angry, am I ignorant? And then what am I going to do to try to change that? And it has to start with yourself. Does that help clarify things?
Yeah, that was a great answer.
Thank you. I'm glad you like my answer. We'd have a lot of fun if you ever came back. Yeah. Yeah, you had your hand up. I just wasn't going to get you chiming in at that.
Understood.
Yeah.
So if I hear what you're saying, it's to be really concerned and involved with the process, whatever it is you're working on, but not attached to the results. You've done the best you could, you put it out in the world, and what is what is. Yes, no?
Yes, but because you've asked the same question various ways for many months now,
Yeah.
let me also come back with this suggestion. It is that, but I would just caution you to recognize that, yes, what we put into the world is what we put into the world, and we're not attaching to the outcome, that we don't know what's going to come of it, right? I can say something to somebody, maybe the person thinks it's wonderful and they decide to give me a hug. I can say something to someone and maybe the person hates it and they decide to punch me, right? That's on them. All I can control, yes, is what I put out there. And if I get wrapped up in thinking, Well, if I put good out there, then that means good needs to happen, and it doesn't, which it won't always, then we get upset. Right? Have you ever been really kind to people and then all of a sudden you just get meanness back? How does that make you feel? Pissed off. But then the challenge is to just be nicer back. How easy is it to be nice when somebody's being mean to you?
Really hard.
Really hard. How difficult is this practice? Really hard. You know? It's being with discomfort. Yeah, so I'll kind of stop there. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. The part that I think we want to be careful with is when we put things out there and we're not attached to the outcome, and the outcome doesn't work out how we want it to, it doesn't mean that there's not still more work to do, is really what I wanted to add to that, right? Because very often there is, whatever that means in whatever scenario. You know, we especially if we're dealing with the dynamic with people, and we often want to just say, well, here's my part, I'm done. But to recognize that maybe it requires continuous work, because maybe what we put out there needs to be thought through, which is really what you said, a little bit more.
That's why I keep asking the questions, because I'm a really stubborn person and I keep having to
Yes.
come back over.
Stubborn people are really great for this practice. At least that's what I found from personal experience, you know? Yeah, Jack. Yeah.
Can you talk about loving kindness meditation?
Yeah, so it's funny because often, like Alex and Irene and Josh sometimes, or Jason, they lead loving kindness here Wednesday nights. And often when people are brand new and they ask about Dharma Bum Temple and I kind of run a quick rundown of the schedule, you know, I often say that, and maybe someone says something about loving kindness, and I say, you know, I do the Tuesday, Saturday class, and then there's loving kindness, which is not me, right? I kind of make a joke about that. And the loving kindness practice is very much about softening, sending love, kindness, opening up your heart, right? I led it years ago, and it, to me, one of the simplest ways to do it, which is often how it's led, is to imagine as you're sitting in meditation, it's guided for one, but imagine as you're sitting in meditation and you imagine your heart and you visualize your heart and you imagine your heart, you know, kind of working, and then your heart opens up and then you think of loved ones, family, friends, and you imagine your heart growing. And then you think of those you miss, those you haven't seen in a while, maybe those that are gone. And you start thinking of all the wonderful, beautiful people, past and present in your lives, and you imagine your heart just expanding. And then all of a sudden it shifts. Now think of people you dislike and put them in your heart as well. And there's usually this, like, even as I'm saying it right now, it might be happening to some people like, I don't want to put them there. I want to have my heart open and love and kind only to those I like. Everybody else can just kind of take a back seat over here, you know? So it's a really beautiful practice. It's different from what I lead. But like I said, the guy, you know, the people that I mentioned, they lead it Wednesday night, and it's beautiful. For people that maybe struggle with having loving kindness towards themselves, for people that really struggle with a lot of anger, hatred towards others, it's a beautiful practice, because to really wake up is to have loving kindness towards every human being, every sentient being, right? Every human, every animal, to really love all of them. And that's really hard, because we've spent so many years building up this idea that I just want to be loved myself. And what we don't often recognize is that the reason it's often so hard to love ourselves is because we filled our heart with so much hatred towards others. So,
Did you ever live stream it?
if we could get any one of them to actually do it, we would. Yeah, none of them have accepted the invite. Yeah. Maybe we can, hide it. Yeah. But tell them they should. Alex, Irene, predominantly. Josh. Yeah. Other questions? Meditation, Buddhist practice, loving kindness. Yes. I see a hand in the dark back there.
I was reading up a bit on how the path starts with it's like the qualities of the tiger, and then kind of coming into like the qualities of the snow lion. So in other words, it's just kind of how like our original path starts very selfishly. And then my question is like, how can we start moving that into a more selfless?
Yeah. So it's a great metaphor. I've not read anything on like the lion and or what was the first one?
It's the
Tiger to the snow lion. I'm not familiar with that, but it sounds great. But I can speak to very much I think the essence of the question, which is how do we go from being selfish people to selfless people? And that's, first and foremost, it's going to take you many years, a lifetime, truly. But it starts now. And the heart, I think, of the Buddhist teachings is really in that question. The Buddhist said we suffer because we have this sense of self and this ego that we spend our whole lives building up and feeding. And we roam around all day long and we think we are most important, right? So you're going to get home tonight, you're going to go to sleep, you're going to hopefully probably wake up tomorrow morning. You ever have breakfast? Okay, I'm just making sure. I don't know, some people don't eat breakfast. And so when you get up and you get hungry and you start to have breakfast, is your first thought going to be, I'm going to have breakfast, what should I eat? Or is your first thought going to be, I wonder how many people in the world right now do not even have the ability to get breakfast?
I would definitely say the first,
Begin to alter that a little bit. And that's just one example, right? We go through our entire day. Do you ever drive in traffic?
Oh, yes.
Yes. Do you ever think that the other people on the road are also important people trying to get where they want to go? Nice. Very good. Progress. Yes. The selfless part begins with recognizing that every other human being in this room, every other person you're going to encounter the rest of tonight and tomorrow, strangers, family, friends, whoever, they're all living with their own struggles. And any sort of anxiety, depression, sadness, suffering, discomfort, angst that you might have, every person you encounter has the same. And can we at least begin to recognize that that's happening with everybody else? And then we work on kind of coming out of, okay, can I maybe share some of this time that I'm putting towards me with others? If I didn't spend all day long focused on me, would that create space for me to help others? So, and I don't mean that you were asking it this way, but for everybody really, to intellectually or philosophically think about what does it mean to be selfless, or as the Buddha called it, non-self, philosophically, intellectually doesn't do us any good. It is only when we put ourselves in situations where we're actually doing things to benefit others and not ourselves, right? And that's why, as Andrew can tell you, the motto for our college group, yeah, Andrew's back there, is for the benefit of others, right? It's to get us to understand that are we living our lives just for us, or are we at least equal with others? And I guarantee there's things in your life that you've done that are selfless, and when you do them, how do you feel? Say again?
That's amazing.
Amazing. And when you do things that are kind of selfish for you all the time, how does that make you feel? I can't hear you, but let's go with not as amazing. I don't know. What's that?
I get too caught up in my head, it's not good.
Right. You get caught up in your head.
Inner knowing, to respond versus how to react to
Yeah, I mean,
the situation.
that's everything. Our entire life is learning how to respond. Every moment of your life is responding. Every breath. Your entire life is responding. It's not just in hectic situations or critical situations or life-threatening situations. It's responding to every single thought you have in your entire life. Responding to every breath that you have in your entire life. And responding to every physical movement that occurs in your entire life. Our entire life is nothing but endless responses, which occur constantly. Each thought triggers something. And when we have those thoughts, if they're unpleasant, the Buddhist said there's pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. If those thoughts are unpleasant, then sometimes it's best not to respond to them, right? And if our thoughts are pleasant, guess what? Sometimes it's best not to respond to those either. Because then all we want is to seek and crave and desire pleasant. And then we have an aversion to unpleasant. So we spend our entire lives running from unpleasant to pleasant. The practice is to abide in things as they are and be mindful of our actions. Does that help a little bit? Yeah, for sure. Not easy. Other thoughts, questions? Devin, were you going to say something?
Yeah, hey Jeff, what is karma?
Karma, I'll close with this thought. The word karma literally means action. And so for those that might be new to Buddhism, or if you've heard this a million times and maybe forgot, often we think karma is what goes around comes around. We often think karma is getting what we deserve, right? You ever had someone you didn't like and something bad happens to them and you say that's their karma, they deserved it, right? And you actually think that you had something to do with that because maybe you wished it upon them, right? That has nothing to do. Karma is not about good or bad. Karma is simply the law of cause and effect. Karma, as the Buddha taught, is generated in three ways: body, speech, mind. What we think, what we say, and what we do. That is the nature of our entire life. Everything I just said with us responding, every moment of our life is filled with thoughts, words, and or actions. And so karma, it's like shoot and pull when you have a cue ball. The cue ball hits the rack. Every single time that cue ball hits the rack, every ball goes in a different direction. So our entire life, we are that cue ball. Every person, place, and thing we interact with, we leave an impact on. And the idea is that because we often think that karma is about me, we start thinking about, well, what do I get? What do I deserve? And if I do good, then isn't good going to happen to me? Or if I do bad, isn't bad going to happen to me? It doesn't work that way. Karma is actually what we give. It's not what we get. Karma is what we give. It's one of the probably most misunderstood, I think, teachings around Buddhism. Now, if you understand that your reality, your life is created by everything you think and everything you say and everything you do, to me, that means pay a little more attention to what we think and what we say and what we do. Ask yourself how much time you spend paying attention to what others think, to what others say, and what others do. Anyone in here ever do that? A couple of you, I get it, right? So we spend so much time wrapped up in other people's thoughts, other people's words, other people's actions. And all the while we're missing, what am I thinking? What am I saying? What am I doing? Right? And for me, personally, for someone who grew up as such an angry, depressed, miserable, pissed off person, selfish, arrogant, egotistical, to have to humble yourself and to actually call yourself out on all your crap, like all of it, that's the practice to me. years ago, I got into an argument with somebody who was a good friend of mine, and it's like, I don't know, 10 years ago. And I said to this person, I said, that's just how I am. He looked at me and he said, well, then maybe you should change how you are. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I should. And that was a big turning point for me, because for me, even within Buddhism, I was so focused on outside. And I had to come back to the karma, which was, what am I creating with my words and my thoughts and my actions? And in all of that, things could still end up a mess. But then we have to respond to that mess. Today, everything for me was a mess. So I had to respond to that mess in ways that hopefully didn't create more of a mess. I guess I'll find out sometime in the future. All I could do was be mindful of what I thought and said and did in that moment, and try to be as, honest and genuine at each occurrence. So, does that help? Other thoughts or anything before we close? Anything? I feel like you got a question, bro. You're good? Okay. Anything else? Before I send you out to enjoy their air conditioning or check on the dogs over there. No animals were harmed in the production of this event. All right, so we'll join palms. There we go. It's just thanking us for caring for them. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering.